Good morning. Thank you for quickly gathering into the auditorium and sacrificing the time away from your classroom instruction this morning. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome you
Recording has started.
Welcome you to Love, Money, Work, a career in social entrepreneurship. A special thank you to the World Affairs Council of Pittsburgh for their work in organizing this event, which will provide us with the opportunity to share some time with Ms. Jessica Jackley, who is a co-founder of the revolutionary microlending website, kiva.org. My name is Mr. Kreider, and I have the privilege of serving as principal of North Allegheny Senior High School. Today's presentation aims to help students of all ages understand how they can utilize their skill set to create a meaningful profession for which they have a passion. Jessica is one of the world's leading female entrepreneurs and can personally attest to the importance of using a diverse and seemingly unrelated set of skills to build a unique career. Best of all, she is a product of North Allegheny Senior High School and is a solid role model for all students. Along with the World Affairs Council of Pittsburgh, I'd like to thank our staff for organizing this event, Mrs. Will, Mr. Tozier, and Mr. Over. I would also like to remind all participants that today's session is being recorded, and would like to ask that those joining us on video conference satellites to mute their mics so that it does not interfere with this morning's presentation. Joining us through video conference are the following participants, and if you could wave to make sure that our broadcast is going through properly. We have a student from NYU in New York University. I'm not sure if we can see them up on the screen yet. We also have Greenwich Academy from Greenwich, Connecticut, who I believe is not in our session yet. A little bit closer to home, we do have those with us from Quaker Valley High School, and I know that we can see them on their monitor. Quaker Valley, you're there. Perfect, thank you, welcome. Joining us in our auditorium, we have local friends and neighbors from Hampton High School, and from our hosts, we have students from North Allegheny Intermediate School, and we also have our students from North Allegheny Senior High School. Welcome to all of you. At this time, please join me in welcoming to the podium Ms. Aminia Massoub, who serves as the Director of Educational Programs at the World Affairs Council of Pittsburgh.
Thank you, Mr. Kreider. The World Affairs Council of Pittsburgh is delighted to be here at North Allegheny and to be presenting this event with Jessica Jackley, who, as you know, is a North Allegheny graduate, as am I. A few logistical notes about this morning. First, we'll hear from Jessica, and then you'll have the chance to do a Q&A. Students on site at North Allegheny and students participating via video conference will be able to ask her questions directly. We'll wrap up the video conference portion of the program at 10:15, at which time students on site have the chance to have books signed by Ms. Jackley. I'm delighted now to introduce Jessica Jackley to talk about her career and how she turned her passion into a purpose. Jessica is best known as the co-founder of kiva.org, the world's first person-to-person microlending website. Since its founding in October 2005, Kiva has facilitated over $700 million in loans among individuals in 216 countries. Jessica was the co-founder and CEO of ProFounder, a pioneering crowdfunding platform for U.S. entrepreneurs. She has taught at Stanford, Drew University, and the University of Southern California. She holds an MBA from Stanford, a certificate in global leadership from the Harvard Kennedy School, and a BA in philosophy and political science from Bucknell. Her first book, Clay, Water, Brick, which is available today, is Clay, Water, Brick, Finding Inspiration from Entrepreneurs Who Do the Most with the Least. It was released this past summer. So like I said, she's also a North Allegheny graduate and my former classmate in Madame Zahn's honors French class. So we're really excited to be here, and thank you for Madame Zahn for bringing your class and for the teachers who nurtured us. And it's my distinct pleasure to welcome my friend and fellow classmate, Jessica Jackley.
I think I'm the shortest person. I'm just gonna do this so you can see my face also. All right. this okay? Okay, if you can hear me in the back, give me a little wave. The backpack. Oh, hi, great. Thank you so much, Amina. Thank you for your time this morning. I don't take it for granted. This is by far the most amazing thing of the last year for me. I'm so I also had another baby. That was great also, but I'm so ridiculously excited to be here. Was that the baby? Okay, baby. Yay, okay, baby. Thank you. This is just like making my, month, year, etc. So thank you. I am very, very honored to be standing here before you today. So I'm going to jump right in. I always think it's interesting to be able to come and speak. Wait, here we go. Sorry for the weird color. It's my computer. I feel, I always pause when I get invited to speak as an entrepreneur. And this is strange. I mean, post-high school, usually I think the number one question you get asked as an adult is, oh, what do you do? And I end up saying, I'm an entrepreneur. But I always giggle a little bit to myself because, to be totally honest with you, this one-word summary of my work feels still a little bit strange to me. To be an entrepreneur was never something that I dreamt of or wanted. In fact, I remember growing up, I thought business was like the worst. For-profit entities were terrible. Don't worry, I changed my mind. Everything works out okay. But I was kind of a hater. And I remember thinking, just go with me, I had all these negative images of business. And I thought entrepreneurs were like the worst of the worst because they were starting businesses. And I thought businesses were about being selfish and taking stuff. And I didn't want to be these people, right? Like, these were not my people. These were not my guys. I did not relate to them. I thought, this is business. It's bad. It's awful. I'm not into this. No. And again, being an entrepreneur, I thought these were like the gang leaders. This was the worst. So entrepreneurship, the opposite of what I wanted to be. I wanted to be with the good guys. And who I thought the good guys were, I thought it was very black and white, were folks working in the social sector and nonprofits, right? I thought nonprofits were the opposite. They were about giving and being generous and solving really important problems in the world, not just, again, creating. I made a lot of negative generalizations in my head about business growing up, but not just making stuff that the world didn't need. So as I graduated from high school and kind of looked around, I didn't want to participate in anything like that. I wanted to kind of find the good guys. But there was a little bit of a problem because a lot of the nonprofits and the organizations that I'd encountered growing up had told me a particular story about poverty. And even in other places where I encountered a lot of wonderful wisdom and truth, like, for example, church, right? I went to Sunday school every week growing up, and I remember hearing things like about service that really motivated me. Things like, what you do for the least of these, you do for me, that Jesus said. I remember also hearing things that not just motivated me, but scared me and kind of confused me about service and poverty. For example, I remember my Sunday school teacher saying, to a class of like 5 or 6-year-olds, that Jesus told us the poor would always be with us. And this scared me because I remember that was the first time that I had imagined that there might be a problem in the world that couldn't be fixed. That there was this long line of people that were always going to be with us, be with me. And I would turn around all the time and they would be there and they'd want me to share my stuff with them. Now, granted, this was my worldview as a 5-year-old, but I still felt both motivated and sort of overwhelmed, a little panicky, a little nervous about this idea of poverty and about trying to be useful in the world and trying to help. Now, these feelings, unfortunately, the latter part of this, feeling overwhelmed and kind of disappointed, maybe even angry a little bit and hopeless about this huge problem that wasn't going away, that set of feelings followed me around for quite a while. And it intrigued me and made me want to figure it out. But I think the reason that I felt so negative about it sometimes is that a lot of the stories I heard about poverty, again, growing up, looked and felt like this. They were stories focused on sadness and suffering, desperation, hopelessness, and just only the bad stuff in a lot of other people's lives. And I started to group these people, the poor, together, and started to think of them as very distant from me. And I still wanted to be helpful. I still wanted to serve them and work with the good guys, right, to help alleviate poverty. But the truth is, it felt to me like the ways to get involved and the things that I could do, my options, were really only very few and very narrow. I would hear, for example, a great, well-intentioned pitch from a nonprofit that wanted to get me involved with their work, and the pitch would basically be, sad story, I would feel terrible, guilty, even shameful about my own middle-class American wealth. And then, right as I was feeling at my worst, I would be given a way out. I'd be given an 800 number to call or some action to take, usually involving, a little bit of money. Sometimes even, this was the big pitch for me, only the cost of a cup of coffee. I don't know if you saw me like chugging my coffee, but I really like coffee. So this was not that easy of a pitch for me. I thought, oh my gosh, do I have to like not drink coffee and give my money instead to the poor? Can I drink coffee and just give that same amount? Anyway, I think it was easy for me to like get caught up in the idea that maybe there was this little way to get involved and kind of check it off my list. I had helped enough that day and feel better. But unfortunately, this cycle of hearing a sad story, feeling bad, getting involved, quite honestly, often to make myself feel better, not necessarily out of a truly thoughtful place or a truly altruistic place to serve somebody else. I wanted to make the sad stories go away. This cycle put a barrier between myself and the people that I so longed to serve. And this deep yearning that I had had for my whole life to have this interaction, this meaningful relationship with the poor, right? And to be significant in somebody else's life started to feel mostly like a transaction and a little bit of a way to buy my right to go on with my life or my day until I heard the next sad story. So look, my involvement, I think, for decades, for the first 2-ish decades of my life, could be summed up by that little jar, right? The please give jar. Kind of throwing change in the jar, throwing something small at the problem that sort of made me feel okay, like I was participating, but really didn't scratch that itch, really wasn't very satisfying to me. So, fast forward a little bit. By the time I was thinking back to where I was, how I was thinking, how I felt when I was a senior in high school at this school, and this is a very special sneak peek into my life as a senior in high school. So I literally grabbed this, my brother's here, I grabbed this from my mom this morning, and like put it on the carpet and took a picture and then ran here. But this, you can laugh, I mean, nobody's laughing. There's some funny things I think I'm saying. This is me. I don't know how I was smiling that way, but anyway, this is my senior prom picture with my good friend, who I'm still in touch with, Barry McLaughlin. Listen, this happened a little over a week after I had returned from Haiti, kind of my first week-long, it was a week-long experience with my church, doing service there, helping to rebuild part of an orphanage, and spending a week with people who lived so differently than I did, in such abject poverty. It had spun my head around and broken my heart open, and then I came back and it was prom, right? Like for me, the sort of most luxurious, spending all this money on a dress and a fancy limo to go out with a bunch of my friends for an evening. It was such a contrast. And although I'm smiling in a super weird way in that picture and wearing an awesome dress and everything, I inside was really confused. And in fact, I had a little bit of a breakdown on the dance floor right here in this building because I felt like I didn't know how to be true to the experience that I had just had a week earlier in the midst of, getting as close as I'd ever gotten to real, true, kind of rolling up my sleeves and having direct contact with the poor, people that I so longed to be helpful to. And then I came back and felt like my world was so close but so far away from theirs. I didn't know how to be true to that experience without kind of feeling bad again. I didn't know how to put it all together. So that's me, senior in high school. Let's fast forward a little bit. So I go to college, I study philosophy and poetry, not business, not entrepreneurship until later. I eventually went back to Stanford and got my MBA, but only years later after I finally felt like, okay, I should learn about this stuff to get things done in the world that I wanted to get done. But I studied things that I loved, things that I thought would help me ask good questions and kind of peel away assumptions that I might have had in the world. That was the philosophy part of things. Poetry, I just every day, people were coming through those doors thinking about how to use business thinking to solve social problems, and even entrepreneurial thinking to solve social problems, the things that I really cared about most. And quickly, I realized I had landed in a pretty good place, and I'd kind of found my people. These were people that had as much passion as I did, but were being incredibly smart and thoughtful about getting things done to solve those problems. So fast forward a little bit more, I'm there for a few years. My job changed and evolved, and I loved it. And I eventually had this sort of rare, precious, wonderful kind of lightning bolt moment, this aha moment when I heard a new story, not just about entrepreneurship, but also about poverty. So it totally changed what I thought was possible in the world. It changed the narrative that I had heard about these other people for decades. So, is everything okay? What just happened? Okay, the show will go on. So I heard this guy speak. I stayed late after work. There's this guy, Dr. Muhammad Yunus, who I'd never heard of before. It was the fall of '03, and he was speaking. He was speaking about his bank for the poor called the Grameen Bank. Now, truth be told, I thought this is like a scam. This is super sketchy. So I went to this lecture, sat in the back, and thought, I'll leave early if this is really lame. But it turned out that it wasn't. This was, again, fall of '03, 3 years before Dr. Yunus and his Grameen Bank would win the Nobel Peace Prize for their work pioneering modern microfinance. I didn't know that at the time. It was 3 years before. But I sat in on this lecture, and it changed my life for 3 reasons. One, I learned about microfinance. Now, for the philosophy major, I was still kind of wrapping my mind around anything with the word finance in it. But think of all the things that you might access at your bank, and think of how all those products and services might be tailored to the needs of somebody living on a few dollars a day. That's a good enough definition of microfinance for me and for our purposes today. So I learned about microfinance. In particular, I learned about microcredit, these very tiny loans for the entrepreneurial poor. Imagine a goat herder who has 10 goats and wants to have 20. Imagine that person getting, sometimes $25, $50, maybe $100, maybe a few hundred at most. Imagine that person accessing a little bit of credit to buy some more goats and buy some more food and build a fence, to do the very basic small improvements that they might need to take their daily survival activities and kind of change the trajectory just a little bit and take those to the next level so that they have a little bit more of a sustainable livelihood and an income to support themselves and their family. That's the story of microcredit, in particular, these small loans that I heard that night listening to Dr. Yunus. Totally blew my mind. I had never heard of anything like this. It's not the silver bullet, but it is a pretty amazing tool to alleviate poverty in the world. And I was just buzzing. I thought this was the greatest thing I'd ever heard. So 1, wow, microfinance and microcredit. 2, Dr. Yunus. I don't know if anybody here, and I can't really see you guys very well, but has anyone ever heard Dr. Yunus speak, either live or online or anything? So I highly recommend Googling him. Basically, his story is as follows, and I'm going to summarize very, very quickly. He was a professor at the University of Chittagong in Bangladesh, teaching economics, and had all these theories about why people were poor and how to lift them out of poverty. And things really started to happen for him when he left the halls of academia and sat down on kind of the other side of the tracks with a group of women who were very poor. They were basket weavers, and they were barely making it. And he asked them directly to hear their stories. He asked them why they thought they were poor. What was the cycle of poverty like in their daily lives? And they explained to him how they woke up every day without anything that they needed. They went to a local moneylender who charged them sometimes 300, if not 3,000%, and I'm not misspeaking, I'm not that jet-lagged, 300+%. So they'd borrow a few dollars, buy materials that they needed to weave baskets, made beautiful products, sold them at a profit, but at the end of the day owed everything that they had made, if not more, back to the moneylender. I'd never really understood what a cycle of poverty could look like in the day-to-day life of somebody, and I certainly had never thought about it as being as a person being really trapped because of a lack of access to a resource like, for example, fair capital. So, of course, the way Dr. Yunus's story goes, and again, I'm fast-forwarding, you should listen to him for real, he kind of reaches into his pocket and says, what if I loaned you the $20-ish that this whole village needed to have a fair loan? He didn't charge them 300%, so he does this. They pay him back. They start to change their lives and slowly, again, change their trajectory and lift themselves and their families out of poverty. And the rest is sort of microfinance history. This began the work of the Grameen Bank. And years later, they've served, I actually don't know the stat offhand, but millions and millions of people around the world. And again, Nobel Peace Prize for his work doing this. So wow, this was me, right? I learned, wow, microfinance exists. wow, this amazing man started his work by going and getting close to the people he wanted to serve and listening to them directly, hearing their stories, and being such a good listener that he had sort of this kind of common sense, at least looking back, insight as to how to help them. And maybe naively, I thought even I could do that. Even this philosophy major who had no idea what to put on a resume could sit and listen to people really well. So that was incredibly inspiring to me. And third and most important, he talked about the poor in a way that didn't make me feel terrible about myself, didn't make me feel guilty or shameful, didn't make me feel panicked or overwhelmed. He talked about people who, had economic need, but who were entrepreneurs. This was game-changing for me. And it's hard to express how incredibly drastic this shift was in my head, but suffice to say, and again, I'm not recommending that you all do this, but if you do, you got my support. So I quit my job at Stanford. I was so compelled, so excited, could we just see the slide, that I quit my job at Stanford and I begged my way into a job in East Africa for 3 months, interviewing entrepreneurs who had received $100 to start or to grow their businesses. I wanted to get close myself. I wanted to hear the stories myself. I wanted to be direct and personal and see for myself what this was all about. So I was there for 3.5 months. Again, this amazing excuse to just hear story after story, interviewing people and asking them how this $100 that they had received from a nonprofit I was working with had changed their lives, if it had. And again, I heard stories. Let's just use slides for just a second, because I'm going to flip through a few. I heard stories that were different than the ones that I had heard from a lot of, again, great, well-intentioned nonprofits, because there was no agenda. It's just people directly telling me about their lives. I met people who, shocker, were happy and had smiles on their faces, not sad faces. I met people who already had a little bit of a success story going. Maybe they had started with a needle and thread under the shade of a tree, and now they had an office and capital equipment. I just encountered people in a scene of abundance often, right? With, again, this happy demeanor. That was different than a carefully crafted scene of scarcity that had been designed to make me feel enough to be able to give and help organizations do what they needed to do. And perhaps most surprisingly, I was not asked again and again and again for handouts. I wasn't greeted with open, empty hands. I was greeted with generosity again and again and again from people who had so much to offer. And this changed how I felt, and it changed what I thought was possible in the world. So myself, along with my co-founder, Matt, started to think about some really basic what-if questions. And I'm taking my time telling you this part because I think look, I've heard a lot of speakers. I love being in your seats. I love being able to hear people tell their stories. And I think it's very easy, especially decades into a career, to say, and I'm only about 15 years in, but even now, I think I could say, oh, and then we started Kiva, the first peer-to-peer microfinance marketplace, and it was smooth sailing, and now it's huge, and that's my story. No. At the beginning, I'm tromping around Uganda with my camera, asking some very basic questions. What if I could stay in touch with my new friends here? Wouldn't that be fun? What if, since nobody's asking for a donation anyway, I could somehow rally my friends and family to pitch in little bits of money, and we could lend them the money they need for a loan, and then they could pay it back. Wouldn't that be fun? Started to ask these very basic questions. And along with, my co-founder, Matt, we built this really simple website, took pictures of people like, just back to the slide, like Sophia in this picture, and that's her just, with the camera, and then put her and her story online, her loan need online. We spammed friends and family, right? And this was in the spring of 05. We spammed friends and family and said, hey, everyone, here are 7 friends in Uganda. We think this is legal. Still researching that one. We think they'll pay you back, but would you want to do this really fun social experiment and lend money to our friends in Uganda? Sophie actually came later, but people said, okay. Overnight, we got about $3,000 that we needed for these 7 entrepreneurs. We sent it over to Uganda, and over the next 6 months, people were paid. And then we thought, oh, well, our experiment worked. I'm laughing because it didn't really prove much, just 7 entrepreneurs, but it was something to get the ball rolling. We took the word beta off of our site, and we launched for real and said, our organization is live now. We hadn't done a lot of the things you actually kind of should do when you're officially launching, but it was enough for us to start, and we put another dozen or so entrepreneurs on the site. So somehow, from that moment of our official launch, pulling the word beta off, from October 05 to October of 06, somehow we facilitated 500,000 in loans. The next year, the total was up to about 15 million, the next year 40, the next year 100, and we're going to cross the the $1 billion mark in the not too distant future, which is crazy, right? I'm saying this and I'm pinching myself. It was such a privilege and an honor to get to be part of the beginning of Kiva's story, and the story continues, and it's become something much bigger than me. So there are not just, there are people from all over. There are individuals on the site. There are groups on the site. And by the way, the experience is still as it was in the beginning. You can come lend $25 or more toward the person that you see on there, by the way, Pittsburgh, right? There are people not just on the other side of the planet, but downtown and all over the US, all over. There are people in Mexico lending to other people in Mexico. There are people in Uganda lending to a guy in Brooklyn who wants to start a hot dog food truck or something. I mean, it's all blurred. It's not just haves and have-nots. It's lenders and borrowers helping each other out in this pretty dynamic way. Anyway, the sites continue to change and grow. These are just some screenshots. And I can keep talking about Kiva during Q&A if you'd like, but I'm going to pause there on the story. It's happened. It's been such a joy to get to be a part of that and to get to be a part of the beginnings of something that's grown so much. There are 120-ish staff in San Francisco and people around the world. So what does all this have to do with you? I'm glad you asked. So what I want to leave you with today, I was thinking, what's the main thing I want to tell you? I didn't just want to show you awesome old school prom pictures, although I feel really happy that I got that done. I think that was important. But what I want to talk to you about is how you think about your own story. I feel like when I was sitting where you're sitting, I was so lucky and so blessed, and I had people around me all the time encouraging me to dream big. And yet, I think I still wasn't dreaming big enough. For me, I felt like my options were the ones, I could do anything, but only within this set of options that were presented to me, right? For example, like the job fair. It was very confusing to go to a job fair and look at everything and say, I don't think any of these fit me. I don't think any of these are me. That was confusing and difficult. But I think what I wish I would have known years ago was that you can make your own path in a completely different direction, in a new direction, in a twisting, winding way, however you want to move forward. You can make your own path in life in this entrepreneurial way. I should say my favorite definition of entrepreneurship, at least academic definition, and I'm sure everyone in this room might have a different one and they'd be perfectly valid, but my favorite academic definition is from a guy named Howard Stevenson. He's from Harvard Business School. Not Stanford, but whatever. He says that entrepreneurship is the pursuit of opportunity without regard to resources currently controlled. And forgive me if I swoon a little bit, but I think that's a very romantic definition, and I will say it again because nobody in the audience swooned, I don't think. So the pursuit of opportunity without regard to resources currently controlled. So think about this. It's this running after something that you want, that you see in the future, running after an opportunity, this idea that you have for making the world better. Pursuing that regardless of what you might have or not have, regardless of what the world can tell you is good enough or not about you and your experience or your education, whether at any given time, I guarantee you this, throughout your life, there will always be a way that you can psych yourself out. You can talk yourself out of being confident and moving forward anyway. The world can tell you that, again, you don't have the right education, you don't have enough education, you're too young, you're too old. There's always something. Ignore it. Live in this entrepreneurial way. I beg you. I hope that I can encourage you to do that today. That's my favorite definition of entrepreneurship, pursuing this thing that you love regardless of what you don't have or do have or any of the other ways that you can look at your life and say, I'm not good enough. So look, how many quick thoughts do I have? I have 2 quick thoughts I'm going to leave you with. So one, if I had any kind of advice, and I'm always very hesitant to prescribe and say shoulds because I think we all have our own journeys and our own stories, and I could pick any one of you, and I'm not going to do it, don't worry, and pull you up on stage, and you could tell the rest of us something incredibly useful and meaningful. But here's what's worked for me. So can I see the slide real quick? Yeah, thank you. The first thing I want to urge you to really consider is to take very seriously this process of figuring out who you are, what you believe, what you value. Know who you are and who you're not. Why is this so important? You're sitting in this place. I know by definition that, at least relatively speaking, compared to the rest of the world, you're a very privileged person. I'm a very privileged person. And I think throughout my life, there have been so many great objectively good opportunities, great job offers, great schools, great relationships, right? Wait, this is so inappropriate. I'm going to say it anyway. I remember in high school, at one point, I went on a few dates with the high school quarterback, and he was awesome. Everyone was like, that's an awesome person. And he's wonderful. He's handsome and, this superstar guy, this super popular guy, but he wasn't for me. And so I broke up with him, and it was a little bit hard to explain to my friends because they're like, but it's fill in the blank with he will remain anonymous. And I remember thinking, no, but even if he's objectively great, he's not for me. He's not my person. So look, There will be the high school quarterbacks out there. There will be great jobs. There will be all sorts of things that will come along the path for you. You need to know which are a fit for you and which aren't. You can say yes to a lot of good things, and nobody will know the difference. Everyone will be cheering you on and patting you on the back. But if you're not staying true to yourself, doing what you believe and what you value, you'll never really, truly reach your own potential and feel the deep, deep joy that is possible to feel, I think, in your work. One other quick story about this, because I think it's important to understand how Kiva's made decisions. 2 years into Kiva, this is so crazy, we were on Oprah with President Clinton. Crazy. And I remember the week after that happened, we got back to the office and the phone was like ringing off the hook. And the phone rang one time and there's this guy, and God bless him, I've never met him, but he just seemed like one of these guys who was like, hey, like one of these slick guys. He was like, hey, love what you're doing at Kiva. We have $10 million in our new corporate social responsibility budget. And it was this enormous company that I will also not name and keep anonymous. But he was like, we want to put $10 million into Kiva. What do you say? Now, we'd only facilitated $10 million at that time, ever. And for a nonprofit to be offered $10 million is amazing, right? But I asked him, I picked up the phone that day, I asked him what he wanted to do with that money. Did he want to divide it up, give it to all of his clients and his staff and like everyone they've ever met as gift certificates so that individual people could go onto the website and lend money and have this experience of connecting with another person and participating in their entrepreneurial journey and then getting that money back and doing it again and again? Did he want to do that? Or did he want to do something else? Long story short, he didn't want to do that first thing. He wanted to kind of invest it and get it all back in one big chunk and kind of pat himself on his back and go on with his life. That wouldn't have been good for Kiva. Our mission is and was to connect people through lending for poverty alleviation. So to connect people, that's the point, that's the what. Through lending is kind of the how. For poverty alleviation is the why. Had we taken that money, it would have clogged up the system and stopped $10 million worth of $25 and $50 contributions from individuals who had this amazing experience, who would have had and who did have this amazing experience coming to the site and lending and maybe changing the way they thought about poverty and potential too. So we said no. So be willing to break up with the QB, be willing to say no to $10 million, be willing to say yes or no to great opportunities, not based on how good they are, but based on if they fit you and what you care about most. Okay, second and last thing. I think it's easy when you have a lot of passion to help another person to think you know how to help them. I remember, had you given me a magic wand, when I was first in East Africa and said, fix everything, I would have grabbed that wand and said, yeah, I can do that. Poof, done. I nailed it. This is great. But I learned that actually I didn't always know how to fix things. That first trip, that 3-month trip to Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, me with the turkey, that other picture, I learned so much, but probably the most important thing that I learned was to defer to other people and let them tell their own stories and just to listen without judgment. I met a woman who had received $100 and had grown her business, and life was a lot better now, and she was in Tanzania, and she told me that the first thing she did with the profits from her business as it started to grow was to put sugar in her tea. Now, look, I had heard a lot of stories from entrepreneurs at that point over the past 3 or 4 weeks, so I felt like an expert. And a lot of people said, oh, the first thing I did with the profits from my business was send my daughters to school, or afford 3 meals a day instead of 2, or buy mosquito nets, or all these really legitimately awesome things. When she said she put sugar in her tea, I judged her. In my head, I thought, that's dumb, why would you do that? But I stopped myself, thank goodness, and I took a breath and said, tell me more. And I listened. And she explained how having sugar for her tea allowed her to be more confident in the world and to invite other people from her village into her home and offer them tea. And it's a big cultural thing in East Africa to be able to have tea together. And she could do that because she could offer them the whole experience, not just tea, but tea with milk and with sugar. It was a point of pride. Doing this changed her whole identity. It changed how she saw herself in the world. It actually changed the success of her business because she had stronger community relationships over time. Game-changing. Sugar in her tea. I was very humbled in that moment and continued to be humbled because again and again, I learned from people what they needed, what they wanted, how they wanted to be helped, how they wanted to have their lives improve. And that was a very good lesson for me to learn. So I guess as much as you have to dig and figure out who you are and then stand strong in that, let other people, give them the benefit of being able to do that too and listen to them and accept where they are without judgment. That's the best way that you can actually help in the world. So to wrap things up, I'm going to tell you one last story that is my favorite, and it's actually the guy after whom I've named my book. So 10 years ago, during that time in Uganda, I met a gentleman named Patrick. He had fled the northern area of the country after a rebel group had attacked his village, and he had nothing. He didn't have shoes on his feet. He had made it out with his brother, but lost the rest of his family, had very little education, had nothing. But he knew that having nothing, right, this definition of entrepreneurship I love so much, he knew that that didn't matter. It was what he wanted to pursue and what he wanted to build that mattered. And one day, he literally, not figuratively, like roll up your sleeves, get your hands dirty, he literally he woke up, he was hungry, he was thinking about how he would feed himself that day, and he looked down and he realized there was opportunity in the ground beneath his feet. He started to dig. And as he dug, he realized there were clay deposits right in that land where he was standing. And as he unearthed the clay, he mixed it with water and realized it could be shaped, so he shaped it into bricks. At first, very rough, kind of misshapen, crumbling things, but he got better and better at it. Eventually, got so good at it that he could sell those bricks for the equivalent of fractions of a penny. Did that, saved up some money, eventually bought a brick mold. Might not look like much, but it doubled his production, and instantly his bricks were smooth and consistently shaped and sized. He could sell those for a little bit more. Now, he dried his bricks in the sun, which was fine, but he knew that if he built a self-contained kiln, he could sell these baked bricks, these fired bricks, for even more. So he did that. You can see where this story goes. I met Patrick a few years after he had begun, and he had several employees, had rebuilt his own home with bricks that he had literally pulled out of the earth with his own two hands. If that's not entrepreneurship, if that's not defining your own story and running after something regardless of what you have or don't have, I don't know what is. So Patrick inspires me, and there's so many others that I've met who inspire me. So to close, for real, don't let the stories that you initially hear define what is true in the world. Go figure out for yourself if there are only stories of poverty, for example, or stories of potential as well. And don't take as the only option the ways that the world tells you you can be involved and you can help things and change the world. Figure out what you think, what you want to do. It doesn't just have to be that path. This is great, but you can figure out how to participate as well. You don't just have to throw your change in the jar. You can be a change maker yourself. And last but not least, as I said, let other people define their stories and say who they are. And as you do, and always, as you listen, I think people exceed your expectations and will continue to be a source of inspiration for you and encouragement. For me, meeting people like Elizabeth convinced me that even this philosophy major could be an entrepreneur too. So look, when you get stuck, think about Patrick and remember, more than anything else, that every single one of us can unearth great possibilities. There's opportunity all around us, and sometimes in the ground beneath our feet, and especially within every human being. Thank you. And I totally cheated, and I'm ending on a kid picture. Thank you. Should I grab the mic and walk? Yeah. Okay, so. Okay, cool. I don't want to break it. Okay, cool.
Awesome. Jessica, thank you so much. That was amazing. So we'll just scoot over here, and it's time. Yeah, it's time. Sure. Yeah, it's time to ask some questions. So students here in the audience, you can line up behind the mic in the pit. Yeah, and then we can also call round robin style on some of the students who are participating via video conference. So we have a couple ringers in the audience. So if you wouldn't mind making your way to the mic if you have any questions, and I'm sure after hearing all of that, I know there are plenty of questions for this NA grad.
And you can't offend me. Like, you can ask me anything. You can ask me about prom. It doesn't matter. Just ask anything you're thinking. Hi.
Hey.
Hi.
So.
Yo.
Yeah, I'm Michael Whitehurst. I'm a senior here at NA, and you said Kiva was based on like making connections between people, and that was the why.
Yeah.
And the learning was the how. How often, as a CEO now living in California, I presume, or wherever, do you still get to connect with those people in East Africa, in Asia, and the poor?
It's a really good question. So to be clear, Kiva started 10 years ago. I stayed for the first few years, tried to get it up and running and off the ground. I left, I did another startup. I've done other things since that, working on a new one now. So I'm not running it right now, but it's been harder and harder over time to go hang out and live in mud huts and spend time with the people. It's my favorite thing to do, but especially with 3 little monkeys at home, it's difficult. I think what I've tried to stay true to is this idea that I never want to be working on something that I haven't had an authentic experience and an authentic connection with the people that I'm trying to serve. And I do think it's necessary to refresh that frequently. What that has meant for me is over the last few years, my twins are 4 and my baby is 10 months, over the last 4.5, 5 years especially, I've had to focus on what I know, and that hasn't been developing world economies as much. I think I'll get back to that someday. I long to get back to that, but I don't feel legit, I don't feel authentic working on things where I don't have frequent contact again with the people I want to serve. So I've worked on other things related to US entrepreneurs and parents. I did some consulting with companies, helping them think through how they treat working moms and dads differently. And then most recently, I'm working on something that's sort of I can't talk a lot about it yet, but it's a blend between social media and wearable technology and philanthropy, which sounds totally random, but it's fun. So that's my answer. I wish it was easier over time, but with little kids, the way I want to parent, it's hard for me to drag them around the world too much, so I stay home a little more. My world is a little smaller and slower and close to home, and that's perfectly good for now.
Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want me to do? Oh, sorry. Yeah. Did I get out of the picture?
No, you're good. You're good. Yeah, thank you. And thank you. I think that's something that's hard for students to realize is that there's like a season for everything. Yeah. And sometimes, like I just say, like, get your yayas out when you can, because you can't do everything all the time. So we'll turn now to Quaker Valley. If you have a question, you can kind of step on up. And then we also have students, I can't tell if it's at Greenwich or NYU. If you have a question, you can unmute and say hello.
Yeah.
Hi, my name's Ellie Falk, and I'm a junior here. I was just wondering, when you said that you're working on things with like parents and stuff like that, did you mean as a part of Kiva or other like organizations?
Good question. So no, I actually am not full-time staff at Kiva anymore. I advise, but I am not there day to day. I left and I started another company that was focused on US entrepreneurs. I left that and I did some investing with a fund focused on companies that are sort of pioneering what we're calling the sharing economy, although it's been happening for a long time. It's just kind of trendy right now, in the collaborative economy. And today, and over the last few years, yes, I've been doing some consulting with large companies that I think, they talk, I'll tell you quite frankly, they talk about struggles that they have with the lack of diversity at the top. They'll get upset about not having women in C-level positions or leadership positions, and yet it's very clear where, for example, a lot of women drop off in corporate America, and it's during the difficult sort of ebbs and flows of off-ramps and on-ramps, as some people call them, of having kids or caring for family members. It's all around kind of caregiving. And so what I've been trying to, I don't know if I should like look there or there to like make eye contact with you. But anyway, hi. But basically I've been trying to help some companies think through how to support parents better, not just by doing the obvious stuff like, have better paid maternity and paternity leave, that sort of thing, but hopefully think through more innovative ways they can support them during those times. Did you know that the US is only one of 3 countries, we're in there with like Sudan, only one of 3 countries in the world that doesn't have mandated, paid at the federal level, parental leave, maternity leave. It's crazy. State by state, it varies, but it's still pretty abysmal. So it's kind of a big deal. So I'm happy to list off like all the social problems that I see in the world, and you guys can all like each go take one and like tackle it and do something awesome. But that's one I've been working on. Thank you for the question.
Great. And the student or students at Greenwich Academy or NYU want to ask a question, if you can just kind of pop forward and we can tell. Also, students at Quaker Valley, if you have any more questions, if you just sit in those 2 chairs up front, then we'll be able to tell that you have a question. So we'll turn the students at North Allegheny. All right, Sid.
So my question concerns like the future trajectory of microfinance. So obviously there's still a lot of structural barriers that prevent the poor from getting access to capital. So I guess my question would be like, first, like, are businesses getting more and more involved in microfinance? And like, is it easier now for like small scale entrepreneurs to get involved as well? And secondly, stuff such as interest rates and like middlemen, right, who give those loans in the first place, is it becoming easier for the poor to access, like, our interest rates going down? Like, I guess my question just, what is the overall, like, trajectory of microfinance? Is it getting easier? What are the barriers that still remain, and how do we fix that?
That is like the smartest question. Yes. Okay, great question. What is your name?
Ed?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So I'll speak very generally about this because I feel like this could be a rabbit hole, and I'm happy to even talk in more detail after. Overall, the other caveat is, for the last few years, this hasn't been my area of total expertise, but I'll talk generally over the last, like, I guess, 10 years. Overall, while yes, things are improving rapidly and there's more and more access to microfinance services, if you look at sort of the need, the gap is still there. It's slowly closing, but barely. Still only, I want to say, maybe a quarter, maybe a little bit more, of those that need microfinance services have access to them. So even though the total number is going up, total need is going up too, and so that percentage is kind of staying same-ish. I think this is right. I'm 80% sure that's correct. The trend is correct. I just don't know if the numbers are exactly accurate. So that's one thing that's happening. The other big trend is mobile, right? I mean, there are so many really interesting startups coming out that are allowing, that can reach areas that couldn't have been reached before with mobile banking. So that's getting really exciting. I think the other thing is everyone's gotten in the game. So it's not just nonprofits and NGOs and non-bank financial institutions. There are for-profit banks out there saying, this is a great business. The poor actually do repay, like, at incredibly high rates. Repayment rates just on Kiva are almost 99% over the last decade. It's insane. And they're generally high throughout the microfinance sector. I mean, 90%-ish, 93, 95 and up. So banks are getting into this. It's good and bad. I mean, I think overall it's great, but there are those initial organizations that have taken subsidized capital, donations, and reached out in a very mission-driven way, really prioritizing social impact, serving people that are expensive to serve because they live very far away and need a lot of handholding and a lot of training, that sort of thing. Banks are getting in the game, and they're serving people who maybe have graduated through that system, and now they're making a profit off of that. So it's a whole conversation to be had, right? Is that okay? Are we okay with that? There's a real famous case, if you want to look at this, Compartamos in Mexico. Yeah, you're totally in this, right? So that's a whole other conversation to be had. What happens when a nonprofit shifts to be a for-profit to be able to ostensibly serve more people? So a lot of talk about there. We can talk more after, but those are 3 thoughts. Sound good? Yeah. And if you have to leave, thanks for coming.
So we'll just keep going with North Allegheny here, unless the students at Quaker Valley, if you step up to those chairs, if you have a question, that'd be super helpful. All right, Sebastian.
Hi, my name's Sebastian. When that sleek guy called you, did you have to make that decision overnight? And what was your biggest thought when he called you, and how you were going to solve that? And what's the connection between finance and philosophy there?
This question. Okay, great question. So, yeah, we had to make that. I feel like it was even in the same phone call because it was so clear that he wanted to just kind of dump the money in. And look, at the time, I love the simplicity of that story, but there's a lot else to talk about there. At the time, Kiva couldn't take on that capital and figure out a way to make the most of it. We were just heads down doing just our very focused mission. We couldn't have taken on. I mean, look, I said, did you want to donate this money and pay our rent forever? I gave him other options that we could do. Today, easy. Kiva can utilize that. There's all sorts of big corporate partnerships that now exist between Kiva and great organizations that are empowering. There are thousands of staff sometimes to have accounts on the system and lend as a team. So there are lots of ways we could have, if that same phone call happened today, it wouldn't be quite as clear cut at all. The problem was, had we taken that money at that time, I mean, again, 2 years in, we only facilitated 10 million. Had we just said, yeah, we'll match this to loans on the site, it wouldn't have fit, and it would have taken opportunities away from individuals, and the greater good for us was to get individuals involved. Okay, and what's the relationship between that and philosophy? I mean, I think knowing truly really knowing what your goals are, knowing what the point is and what the greatest good is there. I think philosophy generally helps me to ask the right questions, I hope, and structure my thinking and make decisions in a way that's very clear, not just always data-driven decisions, like what do the numbers say, but integrating the right principles that matter in that moment. So it would, again, it's kind of this objectively good thing, right? Like it would have been amazing to figure out how to take that money, and we could have changed our mission. We could have, or just done this thing that a lot of nonprofits end up experiencing called mission slip, where you like kind of go off your mission a little bit for an awesome donor who wants you to like operate in this country, even though you had no plans to do that. But you can still like look great and your numbers look great on paper. So I feel like philosophy helps me to, hopefully, if I'm not communicating clearly right now, to think clearly about what I value, how I should make the decision, and sort of analyze all that together. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Do you want me to just keep going? Let's do this. Okay.
All right, my name is Pavle. I'm a sophomore here at North Allegheny. And my question was, so your company, Kiva, they obviously operate kind of similar to Kickstarter and Indiegogo and those kind of companies, like crowdfunding towards these like smaller entrepreneurs. But since you're like operating in a lot of like third world countries like Africa and Asia, what is the motivation for like lenders and loaners to give this money to these people that like, and how do you like assure the loaners that they'll get their money back and like even some extra, or else like why would they be doing this? So like what's the motivation that you're giving to like your clients to like put money into these programs?
Great question. So way back in the day, what's funny is, like, I wasn't using the language of crowdfunding. It turns out we were one of the first crowdfunding platforms, and we didn't know that. We weren't using that word. I remember before we actually started, shopping the idea around and talking to anybody that would give us the time of day. We talked to corporate folks and legal folks and people in the government, nonprofit professionals, and the kinds of criticism we got back were often in two buckets related to what will the incentive be, right? This question, what will the incentive be for the lender? The nonprofit people said, this isn't a tax-deductible donation. Nobody's going to contribute to this. People want to be able to like get a tax write-off. We're like, okay. The for-profit folks said, this is not an interest-bearing investment. There's no possible financial upside. There's not even dynamic potential upside. There's nothing here. This is like the worst investment ever. You get 0% interest. It's awful. And so we had this new thing on our hands, this idea of the 0% loan. And we didn't know if there would be, like, in disruptive, just look this up too, but disruptive innovation, right? Sometimes you create a new product that has no market that you can look at and say, oh, these people will be our people. We didn't know. Would it be donors that say, oh, this is fantastic. It's like a donation that comes back to you. Great. Would it be investor types or socially responsible investment people who thought this is still worth it? We had no idea who our market would be, but we thought at $25 or $50, people are going to want to do this. It'll be fun. And I know that sounds silly, and I learned in business school usually saying it's fun is not a great competitive advantage that you can talk about or a value proposition. But we thought this will be really interesting. Wouldn't it be great to be able to lend $25, have an awesome story unfold that you're a part of, and then get your money back and do something else with it? And it turns out there was enough of a market. But that was the kind of pushback we got in the beginning. I think what actually motivates lenders, my gut, and there have been other, I feel like people at Kiva today could probably give a much more sophisticated answer, but this is my anecdotal answer over the last few years. I think there's this amazing, obviously it feels good. It feels good to empower another person, watch that happen and know exactly who your money is going to, and then to get that money back, it feels very real. It feels very connected and sticky, and it's a different thing to donate money and then get a bunch of updates for the next year or 5 years. It's like, okay, I got it. But to be able to get money and information at the same time, coming back to you on a regular basis every few weeks, I think is a really sticky experience. So I think it's that, and I think, wait, go. You have another?
Yeah, I have kind of a second part of that.
Yeah.
I was wondering, like you said that you have like a 99% like repay rate for these, like the money. How do you like make sure that the money is going back? Like, is it just like you're trusting these people, or is there like some program in place?
Okay, I should explain this. So the way Kiva is structured, the kind of classic Kiva, because there's another kind of offshoot now too called Kiva Zip that's a little bit more direct, that's mobile. Where's my other friend that asked that question about mobile? Hold on. So the way Kiva is structured is as follows. Think of like 4 parts. There are lenders. There's Kiva itself, kind of the team. There are microfinance institutions and other nonprofits that happen to have loan programs, so they're as field partners. So there are hundreds of these organizations that Kiva's partnered with out in the field, on the ground, all the ways to say that. actually they're already experts at doing this loan process. They'll find borrowers, they'll train them, they'll administer loans, they'll collect repayments. They, by the way, charge interest that's fair and appropriate, not moneylender style. Maybe it's 15, 20, maybe even 30% to just get the job done and have somebody get on a motorbike and go out to the village once a week for a year of training before even a loan is administered. So there's lenders, Kiva, field partners, and then borrowers. The borrowers have that resource, have that go-between, have that, that presence on the ground, those experts on the ground who already are doing an amazing job. They're already doing amazing work. Kiva just benefits by saying, hey, do you want to post profiles and information of the people you want to serve on this website? If you do, we'll drive traffic to the site and provide you this amazing community and this world, this audience and free debt capital. So the other crazy thing, by the way, lenders do not just lend for free. They take on default risk and some currency risk. So it's not guaranteed that the money's coming back. So if lenders contribute $25 to the seamstress in Cambodia and she runs to the hills, and this again, rarely happens, or if there's a natural disaster and she can't repay, or any other number of reasons why somebody maybe can't repay or can't repay fully, lenders take on that default risk. That's it. That's how it goes. They don't get their money back. We've seen year after year, even when that happens, because it's so rare and because we're very transparent about exactly what unfolded and why that loan didn't come back, people say, okay, wow, well, thank you. I understand. This is hard work. That's a real challenge that person faced, or whatever the story is, and they're more often than not lending again anyway. So it's kind of a crazy source of capital. Wait, one other comment on this. I know I'm giving a long answer, but this is great. What was really interesting to see was how this source of capital, what's turned out to almost now be, it's going to be closing in on $1 billion in $25 bits of forgiving free debt capital. It's a crazily competitive. It's such a phenomenal source of capital. Nobody else could compete with that who is lending at any interest rate. So it was very disruptive, not just as an interesting thing for lenders to do, but to the microfinance industry and a lot of the players there. So it's been a very fun journey to watch unfold. Yeah. Should I? Okay.
Oh. Hi, I'm Grace, and I was really inspired when you said social entrepreneurship is really about staying true to yourself and making your own path. So on that note, I'm also guilty of thinking of business as the bad guys. And so how would you say, is there a specific type of personality or something like that would it take to be an entrepreneur? Or, for example, you're super risk-taking and you flew over to Africa and quit your job, So how would it, for a high school student or a college student, looking to the future, when it comes to dealing with risks and failure? So how would you advise dealing with those things?
I love that question, and for what it's worth, I hadn't thought in terms of risk until I went back to business school, and then I learned, I'm super risk tolerant. Who knew? I was just kind of making decisions that made sense to me. I would say this. I wish it wasn't so wordy and so many syllables to say this, but I really feel like the thing that I would hope for anybody here is no matter what work you do, what industry you're in, what kind of thing you want to pursue, if you want to teach, if you want to be a lawyer, if you want to do anything, right? You can do that in an entrepreneurial way. It doesn't have to mean to be entrepreneurial, you have to go start an organization. It can be you get into your first job and you see opportunities to make changes that people haven't before, and you decide to be proactive and solution finding and opportunity seeking, as opposed to saying, this is the way things are, I'm just going to do my job and heads down and not try to think outside of the boundaries that you're sort of given initially. So I feel like it can be baby steps. It can just be a little bit of a change in perspective that can have incredibly big results and big ramifications. So I guess I'll also say this about risk. For me, I really knew what my currency was, if this makes sense. So I knew when I was quitting my job, one of the times, and going to Africa, I knew for sure, even if nothing came of it, I was going to be so excited to have had that experience. I wanted an adventure. I wanted to spend 3 months doing this, regardless of, I had no idea really what it would lead to. I needed to do that for me. And I had enough in my savings just to like get through that. And I thought, okay, if I have to come home and just get a job again and figure out the next thing, I will, but maybe this will lead to something. And so for me, it didn't feel like a crazy risk. It felt like I wasn't looking to guarantee a financial payoff in the short term for this move. It wasn't, I felt like it wasn't a risk because I knew what I valued. I valued getting paid in this adventure, in this next step in my story. And I feel like, by the way, over time, in my work generally, it's really good to know what you value and know how you want to get paid, know what your currencies are. Yes, it's great to you should always negotiate, but to get paid financially, that's lovely and helpful. But I also think to know that, I value working with people that I love and respect and don't ever feel like I need to compromise myself around, and that are just super ethical. I want to work around great people and spend my days that way. I want to work on something I believe in. I want to have autonomy and flexibility. Flexibility is huge for me right now. I often work from home with my kids, and I need that. I'm happy to take a pay cut if I can do those things, right? So I think you can, and you should, think carefully about all the things that you value and all the ways that you can get paid, and make sure you prioritize those. When you negotiate, you should always negotiate, even your first job offer, do it. Okay, good?
Thank you so much.
Yeah, do you want to say that, or should I say that?
Oh, yeah, sure.
I don't want to.
So yeah, we'll turn to Quaker Valley next. We have about 5 minutes left, so it's just just talk really fast.
Ready, go. Hi again.
Hi. I was just wondering. Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
Right when you started Kiva, how did you manage communications to the places where the lenders were giving money, and how did they connect with people who were getting the money to put them on the website before you had formed connections with other not businesses but organizations that aren't in the US?
Yeah, so before we had a huge network of field partners, it was just, we did start with field partners, but often they were just individuals or smaller organizations that were willing to facilitate loans and do what we needed to do, right? Collect information from lenders, take a picture of the goat herder with the new goat, and do an update to lenders. So it was very simple and scrappy at the beginning, and eventually we just worked with larger and larger institutions that would work with us. So that's my short answer, and I'm going to keep talking quickly. Good? Quality control on my answers? Okay.
I'm Julie, I'm a junior here, and my question was actually about the lender-borrower relationship. So on the website there was a profile for each of the borrowers, and it told them what exactly they wanted the money for and what they were going to do with it. I was just wondering, for larger corporations or even individuals, how often do they get to see feedback from these people, and how do they connect with them after, even after a few years after the money's been used?
So the shortest answer is every lender's story as it unfolds is different. Ideally, there are several qualitative updates as well as just getting repayments back for each lender. There's always something at the end of the loan, worst case, but there are a lot of different ways that Kiva tries to pull out more of the qualitative story along the way. There's a Kiva Fellows program that's super fun, and there have been hundreds of fellows that have gone out, worked with field partners, and blogged about entrepreneurs that they've met. They spend most of their time interviewing entrepreneurs and then blogging about it for lenders that care about the story. So there's probably some stat, but I don't happen to know it offhand, about what percentage have those stories as well and how many there are. But they're there, and every single borrower's story is on the site, all of them. So you can go check them out and see.
Large corporations still get that kind of close intimacy if they want.
Yeah. So the site treats every lender, whether it's it's people, whether it's a person or an entity that has a handful of people behind it or many people behind it. It just treats it all the same. The money goes in. You can kind of see on the website, and then borrowers have updates as it unfolds. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Ashwin Reddy. I'm a senior here. So what type of interactions do microfinance groups maintain with governmental groups? Are there focus projects that you do when you're providing these loans to these future entrepreneurs? Do you have interactions with the governments of these different countries?
So the short answer to that question, I'm sorry to keep doing short answers, but that's what we're doing, is that every institution kind of does that on the ground and they're the experts in where they work. So sometimes there's a lot of constant engagement with local or countrywide governments, and sometimes they it's a really friendly environment, and they can just kind of get done what they need to get done without a lot of hand-holding, but it's different for every institution and every community.
Hi, I'm Sid, and my question is that for people in developing countries that are in such as a manipulative relationship with their lender as the 300% like money lender, how does Kiva like get around that for people who want their own cut from the loan if they control like the internet access in that area?
So Kiva's not in the business of going out and like fighting, beating down the moneylenders. Kiva partners with great organizations and on the ground that can figure out all the local politics and reach out to the people and make their case for why the individual should work with them and not a moneylender, although it's not a really difficult case to make because usually it's an a lot better proposition. Yeah, thanks. Is that okay? Can we do this or no? We gotta stop?
We actually we're going to do a book signing immediately after this, but for the schools that are on the video conference, we said we'd have a 10-15 stops. So we'll take it the next two questions kind of on the ground during the book signing, so you have the chance to kind of stick around for a minute. So thank you. So Jessica, I just want to thank you so much. This was amazing. We really appreciate you sharing so much of your story and for being so frank and honest with us. I think it's hopefully really helpful for all of you to have the chance to hear from someone who is, telling her real story. I also just want to thank I noticed a lot of Global Leadership Certificate students were here and asked really great questions. And so I just want to thank you for being with us. And for those of you who are interested in this kind of thing, who are interested in international stuff, we do this all the time. And so, we'd love to have you join the Global Leadership Certificate program as well. I want to thank North Allegheny so much for hosting us and for this beautiful setup here on the stage. I know this is a lot of hard work, so I want to thank all of the administrators and teachers who made this possible, and also kudos to the students who were running all the cameras because it looks like a world-class production up here. It's very, very beautiful, so thank you for that. And I also want to thank our partner Kinber for making all of the background, all of the technology here possible. So for those of you who are on the video conference, thank you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again soon. So you can sign off now. So see you later. Bye. And for those of you who are interested in buying one of Jess's books, we'll do a book signing right up front. And you two gentlemen down there, you're in the perfect place to ask Jess some questions immediately after this. So thank you so much for having us here.
No stuff. What's your question? Huh? What's your question? What do you plan on the future for Kiva? Cheers. Like, how should we even approach this? I'm gonna make the question sound better than because that sounds like super. It's like a everyone's naked.
That's why, my friend, you must always Frank, what was your question? I'm asking right now. What? Jose.